The rain fell like bullets on the Georgia pavement. Each drop exploded against the asphalt, sending up tiny geysers of water that merged into rivers flowing toward the gutters. The storm had arrived without warning, turning a mild October evening into something biblical. Thunder rolled across Millbrook like artillery fire, and the wind howled through the empty streets of a town that had learned long ago to shut its doors when nature got angry. Emma Sullivan lay in the gutter at the corner of Peachtree and Oak. Her body shook with cold so violent it felt like someone was shaking her from the inside. The rain pounded her thin designer dress, soaking through to skin that had already gone numb. Her wheelchair sat 10 feet away, abandoned like everything else in her life. The black SUV that had dumped her here was long gone, its tail lights swallowed by the storm before she could even scream. She tried to move. Her arms responded, clawing at the concrete, but her legs remained dead weight. 2 years since the accident, and she still wasn't used to it. The uselessness, the betrayal of a body that simply refused to obey. She dragged herself forward 6 inches, then another 6, her fingernails scraping concrete that felt like sandpaper against her palms. 24 years old. That's all she was. 24 years old, and her own father had just ordered her death, not with a bullet, not with poison, with rain and cold and the certainty that no one would find her in time. Senator William Sullivan had always been efficient. This was just another problem solved, another mess cleaned up before it could damage his campaign. The water filled her mouth when she tried to scream. She choked, spitting it out, gasping for air that came in ragged pulls. Her lungs burned. Her skin felt like ice. The thought came to her clearly, almost peacefully. This is how I die. Alone on a street corner in a town I barely remember. Forgotten by everyone except the father who wants me dead. Then she heard it, the rumble of an engine, deep, powerful. The distinctive growl of a motorcycle that sounded like thunder made mechanical. Headlights cut through the rain, sweeping across the street, and for one terrible moment, Emma thought they were coming back. The men who had dumped her, coming back to finish the job because nature was taking too long. But the bike stopped, the engine cut off, and a man was running toward her through the rain. Marcus Garrett had been riding motorcycles for 30 years, and he knew the sound his Harley made in the rain. The way the exhaust echoed off wet pavement, the way the engine sounded different when the air was thick with moisture. He'd been heading home from the VFW poker night, taking the back streets because Main Street flooded in storms like this. 52 years old, and he still loved riding in weather that would send most people indoors. There was something about the rain that made him feel alive. Made him feel like he was still the Marine who'd ridden through dust storms in Afghanistan instead of the broke mechanic living above his dead father's garage. He saw her before his brain fully processed what he was seeing. A shape in the gutter. Wrong size for a dog. Wrong shape for trash. Human. Female. Not moving right. He was off the bike before the thought finished forming. 3 tours in Afghanistan had trained his body to react faster than his mind. Move first, think later. That's how you stayed alive when the bullets started flying. That's how you saved the wounded before they bled out in the sand. The rain hit him like a wall when he left the shelter of his bike. Cold, heavy. October in Georgia could be mild or it could be vicious. And tonight it had chosen vicious. His leather jacket was soaked through in seconds, but he didn't feel it. Didn't feel anything except the certainty that someone needed help, and he was the only one here to give it. He dropped to one knee beside her. Up close, she looked younger than he'd thought. Mid-20s, maybe. Dark hair plastered to a face that would have been beautiful if it wasn't twisted with cold and fear. Her lips were blue. Her eyes were unfocused. Her whole body shook with shivers so violent he could hear her teeth chattering over the sound of the rain. "Can you hear me?" His voice came out low and steady, the same tone he'd used with scared civilians in Kandahar. The tone that said, "I'm here to help, not hurt." The tone that had talked down suicide bombers and calmed terrified children and convinced wounded soldiers to hold on just a little longer. Her head lifted slowly. Her eyes found his face. And in those eyes, Marcus saw something he recognized. The look of someone who'd given up, who'd made peace with dying, who'd stopped fighting because fighting took energy they no longer had. "Please." Her voice was barely a whisper, hoarse, desperate. "Please don't call anyone." The words hit him like a punch. He'd expected her to beg for help, for an ambulance, for the police. Instead, she was begging him not to bring anyone else into this, which meant she was running from something or someone, which meant this wasn't random, wasn't an accident. Someone had left her here, deliberately. I'm not calling anyone. He kept his voice calm, kept his movements slow. But you're going to freeze to death out here. I've got a shop 2 blocks away. Warm, dry. Can I take you there? Her eyes darted past him, canning the street, looking for something or someone. They'll find me, she whispered. Who'll find you? She didn't answer. Her whole body convulsed with a shiver so violent it looked like a seizure. That made the decision for him. Questions could wait. Right now this girl needed warmth or she'd be dead before morning. I'm going to pick you up now. Put your arms around my neck if you can. She hesitated, just for a second. Then her cold fingers found his collar and gripped tight. Marcus slid one arm under her knees, the other behind her back, and lifted. She weighed nothing, like carrying a child, all bone and skin and soaking wet fabric that dripped water down his arms. My chair. He saw it then. The wheelchair, custom medical grade, expensive, abandoned on the sidewalk like someone had thrown it from a moving vehicle. I'll come back for it. Promise. He carried her through the rain to his Harley. The bike sat patient and solid, water streaming off its black chrome. He'd bought it used in 1998 with the life insurance money from his wife's death. Some men drank, some men gambled. Marcus rode. It was cheaper than therapy and more effective. He pulled off his leather jacket with one hand, keeping Emma supported with the other. The jacket was soaked through, but it still held body heat, still had the patches his father had sewn on 40 years ago. USMC, 1st Marine Division. Afghanistan service ribbons. Purple Heart from the IED blast in Helmand that had sent shrapnel through his leg and killed the Marine standing next to him. He wrapped the jacket around Emma's shoulders. Hold tight to me. Don't let go for anything. Her arms wrapped around his waist. Even through his wet shirt, he could feel her trembling, feel her cold seeping into him. He kicked the Harley to life and the engine roared, cutting through the storm like a knife. Every instinct told him to gun it, to get this girl somewhere safe as fast as possible. But the roads were slick and dangerous, and the last thing she needed was to survive hypothermia, only to die in a motorcycle accident. 2 blocks had never felt so long. Garrett's motorcycles and repairs sat on a corner lot that had seen better decades. The building was old brick, built in 1952 by Marcus's grandfather, with money saved from 3 years fighting in Korea. The sign out front was faded neon that hadn't worked since 1998, the year Marcus's father had put a gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger. Most folks in Millbrook crossed the street to avoid walking past the place. It looked haunted, felt haunted, and in a way it was. 3 generations of Garrett men had poured their lives into this building, and 2 of them had died broken. Marcus pulled into the garage bay and killed the engine. The sudden silence was almost as loud as the storm outside. He could hear Emma's ragged breathing, could hear the rain hammering on the metal roof, could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears with the adrenaline of action, of purpose, of having someone to save when he'd failed to save so many others. We're here, you're safe now. He carried her through the garage into the small back room that served as his living space. It wasn't much. A bed, a kitchenette, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. But it was warm and dry and it was his. The only space in the world that belonged entirely to Marcus Garrett, that didn't carry the weight of his father's suicide or his son's death or his wife's long dying from cancer. He sat Emma down in the old recliner that had belonged to his grandfather. The one piece of furniture he'd kept when he'd cleared out the place after his father died. The chair was worn and cracked but comfortable. And right now, comfortable mattered more than pretty. He grabbed every blanket he could find. Military surplus wool blankets bought in bulk from a base closure sale. He draped them over Emma, layering them until she looked like a cocoon. Need to get you warm. I'm going to make coffee. She nodded weakly. He could see color starting to come back to her lips. That was good. That was very good. The coffee maker was older than Emma, a percolator from the 1960s that made coffee strong enough to strip paint. Marcus filled it with water and grounds, his hands moving automatically while his mind raced. The terror in her eyes, the way she'd scanned the street. They'll find me. Who was they? And why had someone left a young woman in a wheelchair out in a storm like this? The coffee finished brewing. The smell filled the small room. Rich, strong, normal. Marcus poured 2 cups and carried them over, settling into the metal folding chair across from Emma. I'm Marcus. Most folks call me Tank. She wrapped both hands around the mug, letting the heat seep into her fingers. Her voice came out stronger now, though still shaky. Thank you for stopping. You didn't have to. Nobody should be left out in weather like that. He took a sip of coffee, waited, gave her space. In Afghanistan, he'd learned that you couldn't rush trauma, couldn't force people to talk before they were ready. You just sat, you waited, you let them know through your presence that they were safe and you weren't going anywhere. The silence stretched. Emma stared into her coffee like it held answers. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, the radiator clanked and hissed, pushing heat through pipes that were older than Marcus. You want to tell me your name? Another long pause. Then so softly he almost missed it. Emma. Emma, that's pretty. Marcus set his mug down. The ceramic clicked against the cheap table. Emma, I'm not going to push you, but I need to know, is someone hurting you? Her eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back hard, like crying was a weakness she couldn't afford. You can't help me. No one can help me. Try me. You don't understand, the person who did this. She stopped herself, pressed her lips together. He's powerful. He has money. He has connections. He has everything. I've faced down insurgents with RPGs and nothing but my rifle. Marcus kept his voice quiet. Steady. Whoever this guy is, I guarantee he doesn't scare me. Emma stared at him, really looked at him for the first time. Took in the gray beard, trimmed military short, the scars on his knuckles, the Afghanistan service patch on the wall, the hard lines of a face that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. Why? Her voice cracked. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. The question hit deeper than she could possibly know. Hit the wound that had been bleeding for 20 years. The guilt that woke him up at 3 a.m. The certainty that he'd failed when it mattered most. Because 18 years ago, someone should have helped my son, he finally said, and no one did. He died because everyone was too scared to stand up to the man who killed him. Emma's breath caught. I'm sorry, me too. Marcus leaned forward, his elbows rested on his knees. Look, I'm not asking you to trust me completely. I'm a stranger. But I'm asking you to let me help you through tonight. Tomorrow, if you want to leave, I'll drive you wherever you want to go. No questions. But tonight you stay here where it's warm. Deal? She searched his face for a long moment, looking for the lie, for the angle, for the trap. But Marcus had spent 30 years learning to be honest with himself and with others. What you saw was what you got. No hidden agendas, no ulterior motives, just a broken man trying to do one good thing before he died. Deal. He retrieved her wheelchair from where he'd left it, carrying it back through rain that had somehow gotten even worse. By the time he returned, Emma had stopped shivering, though she still clutched the blankets tight around her shoulders. He set up a makeshift bed for himself on the garage floor. It wasn't comfortable, but he'd slept in far worse places. Afghanistan had taught him that comfort was relative. Try to get some rest. We'll figure things out in the morning. But sleep didn't come easy for Marcus Garrett. He lay on the cold concrete staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain hammer against the roof. Every few minutes he heard Emma shift in the chair. She wasn't sleeping either. They were both awake in the darkness, both carrying weights too heavy to name, both wondering if morning would bring salvation or just a different kind of hell. Around 2 a.m, her voice came through the darkness. Marcus, yeah, the person who left me there. She paused. It wasn't a random stranger. He waited. It was my father. Marcus sat up slowly in the darkness. Your father left you in the rain? His people did. On his orders. Her voice was flat now, drained of emotion. He wanted me to die, but he didn't want his hands dirty. He thought the storm would do his work for him. Why would your own father want you dead? The silence stretched so long, Marcus thought she wasn't going to answer. Then in a voice barely above a whisper, because I'm an embarrassment to him. A liability. She paused. My father is Senator William Sullivan. The words hit Marcus like a mortar round. He felt the shockwave ripple through him, felt his understanding of the situation shift and expand and become something far bigger than he'd imagined. Senator William Sullivan, the man whose face was plastered on billboards across Georgia, the man whose campaign slogan, "Family Values First," was repeated in every political ad, every news interview, every carefully staged photo opportunity. The man who was running for governor. The man whose future looked bright enough to include the White House. "That's Senator Sullivan?" Emma's voice was bitter as poison. "He stopped being my father the day I woke up in that hospital bed and couldn't feel my legs." Marcus made more coffee. It was going to be a long night. Emma sat up in the recliner, the blankets still wrapped around her, but her posture different now. More alert, more determined. Like telling the truth had given her back some piece of herself she thought was lost. The accident was 2 years ago. A truck driver fell asleep at the wheel, hit my car head-on going 60 miles an hour. The doctor said it was a miracle I survived it all. "But your legs, spinal cord injury, T10 incomplete, they called it." She paused. "I might have walked again someday. With enough therapy, enough work." Her jaw tightened and Marcus saw the rage there, buried deep but burning steady. "But that would have required someone to actually invest in my recovery." "Your father didn't. My father visited me exactly once in the hospital. Do you know what he said to me?" Marcus shook his head. He said, "How am I supposed to explain this to donors? Not how are you feeling? Not what do you need, just donors." Emma laughed, but there was no humor in it. A week later, his chief of staff showed up with papers. Transfer documents. They moved me to a private facility. Sunrise Care Center, they called it. Made it sound nice and peaceful. But it wasn't. It was a prison. Her voice dropped lower. They kept me drugged. Sedated. I'd wake up and not know what day it was, what month. The staff, some of them were okay. But others, she wrapped her arms around herself. They weren't kind. Marcus felt the familiar rage building in his chest. The same rage that had almost destroyed him after his son died. The same rage he'd spent 20 years trying to bury. "How long were you there?" "Almost 2 years. My father paid them $50,000 a month to keep me quiet and out of sight." 50,000. While he stood on stages talking about family values and the importance of taking care of our loved ones. "How did you get out?" Something like pride flickered across Emma's face. There was a new orderly, young guy, maybe 19. He wasn't like the others. He actually talked to me like I was a person. One night during a shift change, he left a door unlocked. "You escaped." I wheeled myself out of that building at 3 in the morning, and I never looked back. She met Marcus's eyes. That was 3 weeks ago. I've been living on the streets ever since, begging for food, sleeping in doorways. I was starting to think maybe death would be easier. And then tonight happened. Tonight they found me, behind a grocery store, threw me in a van. The man in charge, they called him Victor. He said my father wanted to resolve the situation permanently. They drove you to that street corner and dumped you in the rain, expecting me to die of exposure. Emma's voice was steady, but her hands shook. No direct evidence, no witnesses, just a tragic story about a mentally unstable daughter who wandered off and couldn't survive the elements. And your father would get to play the grieving parent on camera. His poll numbers would probably go up. Marcus stood abruptly, started pacing the small space. His mind raced through scenarios and strategies and the growing certainty that he'd just kicked a hornet's nest bigger than anything he'd faced in 3 tours of Afghanistan. "We need to go to the police." Emma's response was immediate and fierce. "No, my father has connections everywhere. The police, the prosecutors, the judges. I tried calling a detective when I first escaped." "Know what happened?" Marcus stopped pacing, looked at her. 2 hours later, Victor showed up at the homeless shelter where I was hiding. Someone tipped him off. Then the FBI. One of my father's biggest campaign donors is the former director of the Atlanta field office. They golfed together. Emma's voice broke, but she kept going. "Don't you understand? There's no one I can trust, no one except." She stopped, looked at him with something like wonder, except apparently a complete stranger who stopped his motorcycle in the rain. Marcus turned to face her. This girl, this woman. She'd been through hell, Abandoned by her own father, imprisoned, drugged, left to die, and somehow she was still fighting, still surviving. It reminded him of someone. Reminded him of himself before the world had beaten all the fight out of him. I know people, he said slowly, from my time in the Marines, good men, men who know how to dig up information, men who can't be bought. Hope flickered in Emma's eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying your father might be powerful, but he's not untouchable. Everyone leaves a trail. Everyone makes mistakes. Marcus sat back down, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. If what you're telling me is true, and I believe it is, then there's evidence out there, financial records, witness statements, something that can bring him down. And you'd help me find it, even knowing who he is, even knowing what he's capable of? Marcus thought about his son, about the drunk driver who'd walked free while Ryan lay in the ground, about all the years he'd spent running from his grief instead of facing it. Maybe this was why he'd survived. Maybe this was his second chance. Emma, I spent 20 years angry at the world for not protecting my boy. I spent 18 years angry at the world for not protecting my boy. 18 years wondering why I didn't do more. Didn't fight harder. Didn't burn it all down if that's what it took. He met her eyes. I'm not making that mistake again. If your father wants a fight, he's got one. The rain finally stopped around 4 in the morning, but Marcus didn't notice. He was on his phone sending coded messages to men he hadn't contacted in years. Brothers from Afghanistan who'd sworn they'd always have each other's backs. He needed that now. Needed their skills and their loyalty and their willingness to fight battles that couldn't be won through official channels. Alex Cruz responded within minutes. Former intelligence specialist, now running a security consulting firm in Savannah. What do you need? Name the target. We're in. Nathan Hayes took longer, but his response was just as solid. Former JAG lawyer turned private investigator based in Atlanta. Send me everything you have. If there's dirt, I'll find it. Marcus looked over at Emma, who had finally fallen asleep in the recliner. Even in sleep, her face was tense, her brow furrowed, the face of someone who hadn't felt safe in a very long time. That was going to change. He was going to make sure of it. He typed one more message. Senator William Sullivan, full workup, everything you can find. He tried to kill his own daughter, and we're going to make him pay. The responses came back immediately. Consider it done. The bastard won't know what hit him. Marcus set his phone down and allowed himself one deep breath, one moment of grim satisfaction. Senator Sullivan had made a critical mistake tonight. He'd assumed that a girl in a wheelchair, alone and vulnerable, would be easy to eliminate. He had no idea that she'd just found the most dangerous ally in the state of Georgia. And Marcus Garrett was just getting started. Then Marcus heard it. Multiple engines approaching. No headlights. Professional. Emma. His voice stayed calm. We need to leave, now. He grabbed his go bag, helped Emma to her chair. They were moving toward the back when the front windows shattered. Rocks, not bullets. A distraction. Marcus fired twice through the door, high, buying seconds. They burst into the alley as boots hit the shop floor behind them. Sheriff Tom's truck squealed around the corner. Get in! 20 seconds later, they were rolling. In the mirror, flashlights swept the alley where they'd stood. You're kicking a hornet's nest, Marcus. Tom didn't slow. I know. Good. They abandoned the truck blocks from an old warehouse. Tom handed Marcus a radio. Channel 6, you need me, call. After Tom left, Marcus positioned by the window. Weapon ready. Emma pale but composed. They found us fast. They'll come faster next time. But we just have to survive till dawn. And if we don't? Marcus met her eyes. Then we go down fighting. But Emma, you're not dying, not while I'm breathing. Outside, Sullivan's men were regrouping. This wasn't over. Just beginning. But Marcus had survived worse. Taliban ambushes, IED blasts, loss and grief that should have killed him. He wasn't scared of Sullivan's hired guns. He was scared of one thing. Failing Emma, like he'd failed Ryan. That wasn't happening. Marcus settled by the window, ready. And in that abandoned warehouse with a broken woman trusting him, he felt something he hadn't in 20 years. Purpose. Dawn broke gray and cold over Millbrook. Oh, Bishla. Marcus had managed maybe 2 hours of sleep, but he'd functioned on less during his military days. He got up quietly, not wanting to wake Emma, and started another pot of coffee. His phone buzzed. Alex had preliminary information already. The man worked fast. Marcus stepped outside into the post-storm morning. The air smelled clean, washed, new, like the world had been scrubbed of something dirty and was starting over. He wished it were that simple. "Talk to me." Alex's voice came through the phone, rough with exhaustion. "Your senator's dirty, brother. Like swimming in the sewer dirty. Sunrise Care Center, the facility where he stashed his daughter, it's owned by a shell company that traces back to a construction firm Sullivan has major investments in. He wasn't just paying them to keep her quiet, he was paying himself. Son of a gun. It gets better. That facility has had 17 complaints filed against it in the last 3 years. Abuse allegations, neglect, suspicious deaths. Know how many investigations have been launched? Let me guess. 0. Gold star for the Marine. Someone's been making those complaints disappear. Someone with connections to the state licensing board." Alex paused. 3 guesses who that might be. Marcus's grip tightened on his phone. "What else?" "Nathan's digging into the financial side. Early signs point to massive campaign finance violations. Unreported donations, money moving through accounts that don't officially exist. If even half of what he's finding is accurate, we're talking federal charges. How long till you have something concrete? Give us 48 hours. We'll have enough to bury him." Marcus ended the call and stood there for a moment, watching the sun try to break through the clouds. 48 hours. In 48 hours, they might have everything they needed to destroy Senator William Sullivan's career and send him to prison where he belonged. The question was whether they could keep Emma safe that long. He walked back inside. Emma was awake, watching him with those haunted eyes. "I heard you on the phone, good ears. Who were you talking to?" "Old friends, the kind of friends who know how to find things people want to stay hidden." "And what did they find?" He told her. All of it. The shell company, the complaints, the financial irregularities. With each revelation, he watched her face cycle through shock, anger, and finally something that looked almost like relief. "I knew he was corrupt," she said when he finished. "I knew it in my gut." But hearing it confirmed. She shook her head. "Part of me kept hoping I was wrong, that maybe there was some explanation, some reason he did what he did that wasn't just pure cruelty." "Some people are just cruel, Emma. No explanation needed." "I know that now." She sat her coffee down. "What happens next?" "My guys need 48 hours to compile everything. Hard evidence that'll hold up in court. Once they have it, we go to the press. Someone national. Someone your father can't reach. We blow this whole thing wide open. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you stay here. You stay hidden. You stay safe." Emma looked around the small, shabby room. "You do that? Let a complete stranger live in your home? You're not a stranger anymore." Marcus shrugged. "Besides, the place could use some life. Gets pretty quiet with just me and the motorcycles." For the first time since he'd found her, Emma smiled. It was small and tired, but it was real. "Thank you, Marcus. I don't know why you're helping me, but thank you. I told you why." "Your son?" She nodded slowly. "You said he died because no one stood up for him. What happened?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. It wasn't a story he told often, wasn't a story he told ever. But something about Emma, something about the way she looked at him without judgment, without expectation, made him want to. Ryan was 16, bright kid, funny, had his mother's smile. He stared into his coffee cup. He was walking home from a friend's house one night when some drunk in a Mercedes jumped the curb, hit Ryan so hard Marcus stopped, swallowed. He didn't suffer. That's what the doctor said. Like that was supposed to make it okay. "I'm so sorry." The driver's name was Harold Benson. Rich guy, family money. He had a blood alcohol level twice the legal limit, but his lawyers got the test thrown out on a technicality. The whole case fell apart from there. Witnesses suddenly couldn't remember what they'd seen. Evidence went missing. 6 months after my son's funeral, Harold Benson walked out of court a free man. That's horrific. My wife was already sick by then. Cancer. She had maybe a year left, and she spent the last months of her life watching me destroy myself with rage. Marcus's voice grew rough. "I wanted to kill him, Emma. I wanted to find Harold Benson and put a bullet between his eyes. I came this close. He held up his thumb and forefinger barely a centimeter apart. What stopped you, Sarah? My wife. She made me promise. She said, Marcus, if you do this, you become the monster. You let him win. Our boy wouldn't want that. He exhaled slowly. So I didn't. I let Benson live. And a year later, I buried my wife too. Lost everything that ever mattered to me because powerful people decided they were above the law. Emma reached out and touched his arm. That's why you're helping me. Because I see him. Your son. I see a lot of things. Marcus admitted. I see someone who got dealt a terrible hand and refused to fold. I see someone who crawled out of a prison with nothing but determination. I see someone who deserves a hell of a lot better than what life has given her. He met her eyes. And yeah, maybe I see a chance to finally do what I should have done 20 years ago. To fight back against the people who think they can hurt others without consequences. The moment stretched between them, heavy with shared pain and unspoken understanding. Then Emma straightened in her chair. Okay, she said, so we have 48 hours. We have 48 hours. Then let's use them. Whatever you need me to do. Write statements, record testimony, answer questions. I'm ready. Her jaw set with determination, and Marcus saw the transformation happening. Saw the victim becoming something else, something stronger. My father took everything from me. My legs, my freedom, my faith in people. I want it back. All of it. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Something that had been frozen for 20 years beginning to thaw. Then let's get to work. By noon, the small back room of Garrett's motorcycles had transformed into something that looked like a war room. Marcus had cleared off his cluttered desk, and Emma sat there with a notebook, writing down everything she could remember. Names, dates, incidents at the facility, every detail that might be useful when this thing finally went to court. Because it would go to court. Marcus was going to make sure of that. The coffee pot had been running constantly for 6 hours. Marcus was on his 4th cup and Emma was nursing her 3rd. The caffeine helped keep the memories sharp, helped push through the fog that 2 years of forced sedation had left in her mind. She wrote in careful block letters, filling page after page with testimony that would eventually put her father behind bars. Marcus paced as he made calls, coordinating with Alex and Nathan. His phone was old, a flip model from before smartphones took over the world, but it had something newer phones didn't. Real encryption, the kind that the military used, the kind that kept conversations private even when powerful people wanted to listen. Around 1 in the afternoon, Emma looked up from her writing. Marcus, yeah, there's something else. Something I didn't tell you last night. He stopped pacing. What is it? At the facility, I wasn't the only one being hidden. Emma's voice dropped. There were others, 3 other people in a separate wing. I only saw them a few times, but I heard the staff talking. They called it the quiet ward. Other prisoners? I don't know, maybe. They were kept heavily sedated, even more than me. Emma shook her head. I always wondered if they were people like me, people whose families wanted them to disappear. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. You think your father was running some kind of operation? Hiding people for money? I think it's possible. The facility got a lot of private donations, more than made sense for a place that size. Emma met his eyes. If there are other victims, if there are other families who paid to make their inconvenient relatives vanish, that's bigger than just my story. That's a criminal enterprise. Exactly. Marcus pulled out his phone. Alex needs to know about this. If we can prove multiple victims, your father's not looking at campaign finance violations anymore. He's looking at conspiracy, kidnapping, maybe even murder charges. Do you think we can prove it? I think we're sure as hell going to try it. The afternoon passed in a blur of activity. Emma wrote and wrote, filling page after page with her memories. Marcus coordinated with his contacts, receiving encrypted files and photographs that painted an increasingly damning picture of Senator Sullivan's empire. But even as they worked, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He'd learned to trust that feeling during his years in combat. It had saved his life more than once. Around 4, he stepped outside to check the perimeter. Nothing seemed out of place. The street was quiet, a few cars passed by, none of them slowing. But when he walked around to the back of the building, he found them. Tire tracks in the mud behind his garage. Fresh ones, made by a vehicle that had sat there long enough to leave deep impressions. Someone had been watching his shop. Marcus's blood went cold. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Alex, we might have a problem. Talk to me. Tire tracks behind the building. Someone was parked here. Recent. Maybe this morning while we were inside. They found you. Probably. Marcus scanned the empty lot behind his shop. The question is whether they're coming back. Count on it. Alex's voice was grim. How long until Nathan gets there? He said noon. Should be here any minute. Good. When he arrives, you three need to relocate. Find somewhere off-grid. I'm still 2 hours out, but I'll meet you wherever you are. Marcus hesitated, then decided. No, we're not running. Let them come. I'd rather face them on ground I know than get caught on the road. Brother, that's a bad tactical decision. Maybe, but it's my decision. Marcus's jaw set. Besides, if they wanted to hit us, they'd have done it already. Those tracks are hours old. They were watching, gathering intelligence. They'll wait until dark. Then you've got maybe 4 hours. Use them, I intend to. Marcus ended the call and went back inside. Emma was still writing, but she looked up when she saw his expression. What's wrong? Probably nothing. He lied badly. Just being cautious. Marcus, don't do that. Don't protect me from the truth. He told her about the tire tracks. Watch the color drain from her face. But to her credit, she didn't panic, didn't break down. Just nodded slowly and went back to writing with renewed urgency. We need to work faster. Yeah, we do. Nathan Hayes arrived at 4:30 driving a black Ford Explorer that had seen better years. He was a tall man, thin in the way of people who forgot to eat when they were working. 50 years old with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He wore khakis and a button-down shirt like he was heading to a country club instead of a mechanic's shop in the bad part of town. He came in carrying a leather briefcase that looked older than Marcus. Set it on the desk next to Emma's notebook. Looked at her for a long moment. You must be Emma. She nodded. I'm Nathan Hayes. I've been investigating your father for 2 years. Never had enough to nail him. He opened the briefcase. Until now, what changed? You did. Nathan pulled out a stack of files. You survived, and that changes everything. He spread the documents across the desk. Bank statements, corporate filings, emails printed on paper because paper couldn't be hacked or remotely deleted. Emma leaned forward, scanning the pages, and Marcus saw her eyes widen. This is all his? This is what I could find in 2 years of looking. Nathan tapped one document. Shell companies, 12 of them, all funneling money through the Cayman Islands and back into Sullivan's campaign fund. He pointed to another page. Donations from people who don't exist. Addresses that are empty lots. Social security numbers that belong to dead people. That's illegal. Very. But hard to prove without a witness willing to testify. Nathan looked at Emma. Are you willing? To testify against my father? Emma's voice was steady. Absolutely. Even knowing what it'll cost you? The media attention, the threats, the people who'll call you a liar or worse. Even knowing your father will use every resource he has to destroy your credibility. Emma met his eyes. He already tried to kill me. What else can he do? Nathan smiled for the first time. A thin smile, but genuine. Then we have a case. He pulled out another document. This one was different. Longer, more detailed. Emma, I need to ask you about your mother. The room went very still. What about her? She died 6 years ago. Cancer complications. That's the official story. Emma's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. What's the unofficial story? Nathan looked at Marcus, then back at Emma. I've been digging into your mother's death. The hospital records, the doctor's notes, the timeline, and I found some irregularities. What kind of irregularities? Your mother was receiving chemotherapy at Emory University Hospital. Stage 2 breast cancer. Survival rate for that is over 85%. She was responding well to treatment. Then one day she has an adverse reaction and dies within minutes. That happens sometimes, doesn't it? It does, but it's rare. And usually there are warning signs. Elevated heart rate, blood pressure changes, breathing difficulties. Nathan flipped through the medical records. Your mother's vitals were normal up until the moment they weren't. Like someone flipped a switch. You think someone killed her? I think it's possible. Nathan pulled out another document. The attending physician was Dr. James Morrison. Does that name mean anything to you? Emma thought for a moment. Then her face went pale. Morrison, he works at Sunrise Care Center now. He was one of the doctors who kept me sedated. The same man who was in the room when your mother died is now working at the facility your father uses to hide people. Nathan let that sink in. That's not a coincidence. Oh my God. Emma's hands shook. He had my mother killed. I can't prove it yet. But I'm working on it. Nathan's voice was gentle but firm. Emma, I need you to tell me about your aunt. Margaret Mitchell, your mother's sister. She died too, right after my mother. Everyone said it was grief, that she couldn't handle losing her sister. Emma, your aunt isn't dead. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. What? Nathan pulled out a patient roster. Sunrise Care Center, Quiet Ward. Patient admitted November 2018, 6 years ago, right after your mother's funeral. He turned the paper toward Emma. Patient name, Margaret Mitchell, age 55. Diagnosis, acute psychotic episode. Still there, still sedated, still very much alive. Emma stared at the document. Her breathing came faster, shallow. Marcus moved closer, ready to catch her if she fainted. But Emma didn't faint. She grabbed the paper with both hands and read it 3 times. Aunt Maggie, her voice broke. She's been there the whole time, 6 years. And I thought she couldn't finish. Your father told you she died. At the funeral, Emma was crying now. He said she had a heart attack, couldn't handle the grief. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my father. Marcus put a hand on her shoulder. Because you were 20 years old and grieving your mother. Because you trusted him. Because children are supposed to be able to trust their parents. Nathan gave them a moment, then quietly, there's more. I've found evidence of at least 14 other patients across 4 facilities. All of them committed by family members. All of them heavily sedated. All of them generating monthly payments to Senator Sullivan's shell companies. 14 people, at least. Nathan's expression was grim. I think the real number is higher. Much higher. The door opened and Alex Cruz walked in without knocking. He was shorter than Marcus but built like a tank. Hispanic features weathered by decades of desert sun and combat stress. He wore jeans and a tactical vest over a plain black shirt. His eyes swept the room in half a second, cataloging exits and threats in tactical positions. Sorry I'm late, traffic was hell. He saw Emma and his expression softened slightly. You must be the girl who's causing all this trouble. Emma managed a weak smile. That's me. Alex set down a laptop, opened it, turned it toward the group. You all need to see this. The screen showed surveillance footage, black and white, timestamped from 3 weeks ago. The location tag said Sunrise Care Center. The camera angle showed a hallway, white walls, fluorescent lights, the sterile environment of a medical facility. I hacked their security system 2 days ago. Alex tapped the keyboard, been going through footage, found something interesting. The video played, a man walked into frame. Expensive suit, silver hair, handsome in the way of politicians who paid attention to their appearance. Marcus recognized him immediately from the campaign billboards. Senator William Sullivan. Sullivan stopped in front of a door marked private, turned to speak to someone off camera. The audio was faint, but Alex had enhanced it. Sullivan's voice came through clear. How many doses did we give her this week? A second voice. Male, nervous. 4, sir, as instructed. Good. Keep her sedated. I don't want any more escape attempts. Yes, sir. But, Senator, she's showing signs of organ stress. If we continue at this rate, then we continue until she's no longer a problem. I want my daughter permanently out of the picture before the primary. Am I clear? Perfectly clear, sir. Sullivan walked off camera. The footage ended. Emma was shaking violently. He was going to kill me. She could barely speak. He was actually going to kill me. Marcus felt rage building in his chest, white-hot and dangerous. The kind of rage that had almost made him pull the trigger on Harold Benson 20 years ago. But this time was different. This time he had a target that deserved it. This time the law might actually work. That's him ordering your death on video. Marcus kept his voice level despite the fury. Time-stamped, his face clear, his voice recorded. That's not just attempted murder. That's premeditated conspiracy to commit murder. And we have it. Nathan was already thinking 3 steps ahead. This is admissible. This is prosecutable. This puts him away for life if we can get it to the right people. Alex closed the laptop. Problem is, Sullivan has connections everywhere. Local police are compromised. State prosecutors take his money. Even some federal judges owe him favors. Then we go public, Marcus said. Straight to the media. Every outlet at once. Make it too big to bury. That could work. Nathan nodded slowly. But we'd need protection for Emma. Witness protection. Federal level. I might be able to help with that. Alex pulled out his phone. I've got a contact. FBI. Clean, ambitious. Been looking for a case big enough to make her career. Her? Agent Sarah Chen. Organized Crime Division. She's been investigating political corruption for 5 years. Never had a case stick because the targets always had better lawyers and deeper pockets. But this? Alex gestured at the laptop. This she can use. Can you trust her? I trust that she wants to take down a dirty senator more than she wants to protect one. That's enough. Make the call. While Alex stepped outside to talk to his FBI contact, Nathan continued laying out evidence. More shell companies, more hidden patients, a network that spanned not just Georgia but 12 other states. The scope was staggering. Emma, I found something else. Nathan pulled out another document. This one was a calendar. Your father's personal schedule. He gets it printed out every week, old school. Doesn't trust digital. How did you get this? I have a friend who cleans his campaign office. She takes photos. Nathan pointed to an entry from 5 days in the future. Protocol clean, scheduled for 10 p.m. next Thursday. No other details. Protocol clean. What's that? I don't know. But look at the facilities involved. He showed her 4 locations: Sunrise Care Center, Serenity Hills in Macon, Peaceful Meadows in Columbus, Haven Rest in Valdosta. All 4 facilities on the same night. That's not a coincidence. No, it's not. Nathan's voice was grave. I think Protocol Clean is exactly what it sounds like. A cleanup operation. Eliminate the evidence. The patients. Emma's face went white. He's going to kill all of them, all at once. How many people are we talking about? Nathan checked his notes. Based on the patient rosters I found, at least 15 people across those 4 facilities. 15 people. Marcus felt the weight of it. 15 innocent people who'd be murdered to protect one man's political career. Before anyone could respond, Alex's phone buzzed. He checked the screen and his expression darkened. It's my inside contact at Sullivan's campaign office. He put it on speaker. The voice was breathless, urgent. Protocol Clean just got moved up. It's happening tonight, 10 p.m. Sullivan knows someone's digging into the facilities. He's accelerating the timeline. Emma's face went pale. Tonight? That's 6 hours from now. Marcus stood. Then we move now. No more planning. We hit all 4 facilities before he can execute. Nathan shook his head. We're not ready. We don't have enough people or equipment. We make do with what we have. Alex was already texting his team. Those 15 people don't have time for us to be ready. They have 6 hours. Maybe less. We have to stop him. Emma stood up from her wheelchair. The sudden movement made her sway, but she gripped the desk for support. We have to get those people out. Emma, sit down before you fall. Marcus moved to help her, but she waved him off. No. Listen to me. Those people are in there because of my father, because of my family, because someone decided they were inconvenient and paid to make them disappear. She looked at each of them. I can't let them die. I won't. Nathan was already calculating. Protocol Clean is scheduled for Thursday. That gives us 4 days. We don't have 4 days. Alex came back in. His face was grim. Chen says Sullivan's people are on the move. They've been calling in favors, activating assets. Something big is about to happen. How big? Big enough that she's recommending we get Emma into protective custody tonight. No, Emma's voice was steel. I'm not hiding, not anymore. Emma, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. If we wait for the law to protect me, I'll be dead before morning. You said it yourself. Sullivan has connections everywhere. The only way I survive is if we take him down first. Tonight. The room went silent. They all knew she was right. Knew that waiting meant giving Sullivan time to strike first. Time to make evidence disappear. Time to eliminate witnesses. Marcus looked at Alex. How fast can you mobilize your team? Everyone's on standby. I can have 8 operators here in 3 hours. Nathan, I can have legal documents ready. Wellness check authorizations. Enough legal cover to get us into those facilities without committing crimes. And once we're in, then we extract the patients and we document everything. Every bruise, every needle mark, every locked door and restraint. We build a case so airtight that even Sullivan's lawyers can't break it. Marcus turned to Emma. This is your call. We can try to wait out the legal system. Go through proper channels, or we can move it tonight. Hit all 4 facilities. Get those people out before Sullivan can execute protocol clean. Emma didn't hesitate. We go tonight. Alex started making calls. His team began mobilizing. 8 former special operations soldiers who traded military service for private security work. Men who knew how to move fast and quiet, who could handle themselves if things went sideways. Nathan worked on the legal documents, creating a paper trail that would justify their actions, making sure that when this ended up in court, and it would end up in court, they'd have plausible deniability for the raid itself. Marcus checked his weapons. The Remington 870 shotgun, the Colt 1911 that had belonged to his father, the Glock 19 he'd carried through 3 tours of Afghanistan. He didn't want violence, didn't want anyone to get hurt. But he'd learned in the desert that wanting peace and preparing for war weren't mutually exclusive. Emma sat in her wheelchair watching them work, watching these men she barely knew risk everything to save strangers they'd never met, all because it was the right thing to do, all because some battles had to be fought regardless of the cost. Around 6 in the evening, the first warning came, not from Alex or Nathan, but from Sheriff Tom Hendricks. The sheriff walked into the shop without knocking, his hand resting casually on his service weapon. His eyes took in the scene, the weapons, the maps, the tactical gear. His expression didn't change. Marcus, the sheriff's voice was neutral. Careful. Want to tell me what you're planning? Tom. Marcus met his eyes. Can't do that. The sheriff was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Emma. You're the Sullivan girl, the one who's supposed to be in that care facility. Was in that facility, Emma corrected, until I escaped 3 weeks ago, and your daddy's looking for you. My daddy tried to kill me. Sheriff Hendricks studied her face, looked back at Marcus. This about those tire tracks behind your building? You saw them? I'm the sheriff. I see everything. Tom moved further into the room. Marcus, whatever you're planning, you need to be smart about it. Sullivan has friends, powerful friends. I know. Then you know if you go after him, you'd better not miss. We won't miss. The sheriff looked at the maps, at the marked locations. 4 facilities spread across Georgia. His eyes narrowed. You're going to raid them. We're going to conduct wellness checks. Nathan spoke up. Completely legal. We have authorization. The hell you do. I will by 8 p.m. Sheriff Hendricks shook his head slowly. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He pulled out his radio and set it on the desk. Channel 6. If you need backup, you call. Understood? Tom, you can't be part of this. I'm not part of anything. I'm just a sheriff who might happen to be listening to his radio tonight. Who might happen to respond if I hear about citizens in distress. He headed for the door, stopped, looked back. You bring those people out safe, Marcus. All of them. This town doesn't need any more ghosts. After the sheriff left, Alex whistled low. You've got the local law on your side. That's something. Tom's a good man, Marcus said. Afghanistan vet. Knows what it's like to fight against impossible odds. Speaking of impossible odds, Nathan pulled up a new document. I found the patient roster for the quiet ward at Sunrise. Your aunt's there, Emma, room 4, along with 3 others. Emma's hands clenched into fists. Then that's where we start. The plan came together piece by piece. 4 teams, 4 facilities. Simultaneous entry at 10 p.m. Extract all patients. Document everything. Get out before Sullivan's people could respond. It was risky, borderline crazy. Exactly the kind of operation that got people killed. But it was also the right thing to do. And sometimes that was enough. Alex's team started arriving around 7. They came in separate vehicles, parking blocks away and walking in. 8 men who looked like they could handle themselves. Veterans all, Marines, Army Rangers, one former Navy SEAL who'd done 3 tours in Iraq before retiring to sell insurance in Savannah. They wore civilian clothes but carried themselves like soldiers. You could always tell. Marcus briefed them on the plan, showed them the layouts of the facilities, explained the rules of engagement. No violence unless absolutely necessary. No permanent injuries. They were there to rescue people, not fight a war. One of the operators, a stocky man with a scar across his left cheek, raised his hand. "What if Sullivan's people are waiting for us? Then we adapt," Alex answered. "But intel suggests they don't know we're coming. They think we're scared. Hiding. That gives us the element of surprise. And if we're wrong, then we call the sheriff and we fight our way out." Marcus's voice was flat. "But we don't leave anyone behind. Everyone comes out. Patients and operators. No exceptions." The men nodded. They understood. Leave no one behind. The code they'd all lived by. The code that had kept them alive in places where death came cheap and easy. Emma insisted on coming. Marcus tried to argue, but she shut him down fast. "These people are prisoners because of my father, because of my family name. I'm not sitting in safety while others risk their lives to fix my family's mistakes. You'll be a liability. You can't walk. You can't run if things go bad. Then I'll roll." Emma's eyes blazed. "But I'm coming. You can accept that, or we can waste time arguing while those people stay locked up." Marcus looked at Alex, who shrugged. "She's got spirit. I like that. Fine. But you stay in the vehicle until we clear the building. And if shooting starts, you get down and you stay down." "Clear." Crystal. They loaded into 3 vans. Black, unremarkable. The kind of vehicles that disappeared into traffic. Each van held a team of 3 operators plus Marcus, Alex, or Nathan to lead them. Emma went with Marcus in the lead van heading to Sunrise Care Center, the facility where she'd been imprisoned, the facility where her aunt had been locked away for 6 years. The drive took 20 minutes, long enough for doubt to creep in, long enough to question whether they were doing the right thing, long enough for Marcus to remember every operation that had gone wrong in Afghanistan, every plan that had fallen apart under contact, every time he'd led men into danger and not all of them had come back. But this time was different. This time they were fighting for something that mattered. Not oil or politics or abstract concepts of freedom. They were fighting to save 15 people who'd been abandoned by everyone else. That had to count for something. They parked 3 blocks from Sunrise Care Center at 9:45, waited for the radio check. Team Bravo in position at Serenity Hills in Macon. Team Charlie ready at Peaceful Meadows in Columbus. Team Delta set at Haven Rest in Valdosta. All teams reported ready. Marcus checked his watch. 9:58, 2 minutes. The night was clear and cold, stars visible overhead. A beautiful night, the kind of night that made you glad to be alive. Marcus hoped it stayed that way, hoped that in 2 hours they'd all be drinking coffee and laughing about how easy it had been. But hope and planning were different things. At 10 p.m. exactly, Marcus keyed his radio. All teams go. They moved. The Sunrise Care Center sat quiet under the Georgia stars, 2 stories of white brick and false promises. A sign out front proclaimed excellence in long-term care since 2015. Marcus had seen plenty of lies in his 52 years, but that sign might have been the biggest. There was no excellence here, just darkness dressed up as mercy. The security guard sat in his booth reading a magazine. Overweight, mid-50s, the kind of rent-a-cop who took the job because it was easy money and you didn't have to do much. He never saw Marcus coming, never heard the door open, just felt the arm around his throat and the pressure on his carotid artery, and then the world went dark. Marcus zip-tied his hands and feet, gagged him with duct tape, and dragged him into the shadows. Non-lethal, clean, exactly how they'd planned it. Alex and 2 operators came through the front door like they owned the place, confident, professional. The night nurse looked up from her station and opened her mouth to speak, but Alex already had his credentials out. "Security consultant, we're conducting a surprise safety audit. You're going to want to cooperate." The nurse was young, maybe 25. She looked at the 3 large men in tactical gear and made the smart choice. Her hands went up. Okay. Just don't hurt anyone." "We're not here to hurt anyone." Alex kept his voice calm. "We're here to help." "Where's the quiet ward?" "I don't know what you mean." Alex pulled out his phone, showed her the patient roster Nathan had found. Margaret Mitchell, room 4, quiet ward. Where is it? The nurse's face went pale. Basement. Access through the service elevator behind the kitchen. Show us. 2 minutes later, they were descending into the basement. The elevator was old, the kind with a metal gate that folded across the door. It creaked and groaned as it dropped below ground level. The smell hit Marcus before the doors opened. Antiseptic trying to cover something worse. Urine, decay. The smell of people who'd been forgotten. The basement hallway stretched before them. White walls, fluorescent lights that hummed and flickered. 4 heavy metal doors, each with a small window. Each window showing a glimpse of hell. Marcus went to the first door, looked through the glass. An elderly woman lay on a narrow bed, restraints around her wrists and ankles. An IV drip fed something into her arm. Her eyes were open but vacant, staring at nothing, seeing nothing. He tried the door. Locked. Alex handed him a pry bar. The lock broke with one hard pull. Marcus went inside and his combat medic training kicked in automatically. Check pulse, check breathing, check the IV bag to see what they were pumping into her. Haldol, Ativan, enough sedatives to drop a horse. Ma'am, can you hear me? No response. She was alive but barely present. Somewhere far away in a chemical fog they'd put her in and never let her out of. Get her ready to move. While the operators worked to free the first patient, Marcus moved to the second door. Then the third, each room the same. Each patient in the same condition. Drugged into compliance. Restrained like animals. Treated like problems instead of people. The fourth door was different. When Marcus looked through the window, the woman inside was awake. Thin, pale, but her eyes were alert, focused. She turned her head when she heard him at the door, and even through the haze of sedation recognition flickered in her face. Who are you? My name's Marcus. I'm here to get you out. He broke the lock and entered, started working on the restraints around her wrists. Are you Margaret Mitchell? The woman's breath caught. How do you know my name? Your niece sent me. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Emma. Is Emma alive? She's alive. She's outside right now waiting for you. They told me she was dead. Margaret's voice broke. They said she died in the accident, that I'd lost everyone. They lied about a lot of things. Marcus freed her wrists and moved to her ankles. The restraints had left deep marks in her skin. Raw. Infected. How long had she been tied down like this? How many days or weeks or months? Can you walk? I don't know. They keep me drugged. I can barely think most of the time. Then I'll carry you. He lifted Margaret from the bed. She weighed almost nothing. Another victim starved and drugged into submission by Senator Sullivan's machine. Another person whose only crime was knowing too much and caring too much and threatening the wrong man's career. The operators had the other 3 patients ready. 4 victims freed. 4 lives saved. But Marcus knew this was just the beginning. 3 other teams were hitting 3 other facilities right now. 15 people total if everything went according to plan. And in Marcus's experience, things rarely went according to plan. They carried the patients to the elevator. Marcus could hear voices upstairs, shouting. Someone had triggered an alarm. That was faster than he'd hoped, but not unexpected. They'd known going in that they had maybe 10 minutes before someone noticed. They were at minute 8, Alex keyed his radio. Team Alpha exfil in 2, status on other teams. Team Bravo clear, 4 patients secured. Team Charlie encountering resistance. Guards armed, need another 5 minutes. Team Delta clear, 4 patients out. Marcus did the math. 13 patients rescued. 2 still trapped at the Columbus facility. Not acceptable. Tell Charlie to hold position. We're coming to them. Negative. Alex shook his head. We stick to the plan. Get these people to safety, then assess. The plan was 4 simultaneous extractions, in and out before Sullivan's people could respond. But plans changed when lives were at stake. Marcus had learned that the hard way in Afghanistan. Sometimes you had to improvise. They emerged from the basement into chaos. The nurse they'd left upstairs had recovered from her shock and hit every alarm she could find. Red lights flashed, sirens wailed, and through the front windows, Marcus could see headlights. Multiple vehicles arriving fast. We've got company. How many? Too many. Alex pulled his sidearm. Non-lethal rounds but effective at close range. The operators formed up around the patients, creating a human shield. They moved toward the side exit, away from the arriving vehicles. Emma's voice crackled over the radio. "Marcus, I see them. 6 vehicles, maybe 20 men. They're surrounding the building. Can you get clear?" "Already moving. I'm heading to the rendezvous point." "Good. Stay there. We'll meet you when we can." They burst through the side door into the parking lot. 3 of Sullivan's men were already there waiting. Professional. Armed. The kind of private security that costs serious money. They raised weapons as Marcus's team emerged. "Put them down. Now." The lead guard's voice was flat. Professional. "Drop the patients and put your hands up. These people are coming with us." Marcus kept walking. Didn't slow, didn't stop. Called their bluff because men like this didn't want a firefight. Didn't want to explain dead bodies to the police. They wanted compliance through intimidation. "Sir, I will shoot." "No, you won't. Because if you do, the sheriff gets called. The FBI gets involved. Your boss goes to prison." Marcus closed the distance. "Now step aside." For a long moment, nobody moved. The guard's finger was on the trigger. Marcus's hand was on his weapon. The operators had their patience and their orders. The whole thing balanced on a knife edge. Then headlights swept across the lot. A pickup truck came around the corner moving fast. Sheriff Tom Hendricks leaned out the window with a radio in one hand. "This is the sheriff. All armed individuals will lower their weapons immediately. This is your only warning." The guards looked at each other, looked at the sheriff, looked at Marcus, then slowly, reluctantly, they lowered their weapons. "You're making a mistake. Only mistake I'm making is not shooting you." Marcus moved past them. Operators loaded the patients into the vans. Sheriff Hendricks provided cover with his presence, if not his badge. Within 90 seconds, they were rolling. Marcus keyed the radio. "All teams status report. Team Bravo clear and moving to rendezvous. Team Delta clear and moving. Team Charlie still pinned." "We need backup." Sheriff Hendricks was already turning his truck around. "I got it. You get those people to safety." "Tom, you can't. Watch me." The sheriff peeled out, heading toward Columbus. Marcus wanted to follow, wanted to help. But he had 4 patients in critical condition who needed medical care immediately. Sometimes leadership meant making the hard choices, meant trusting your people to handle their own missions while you completed yours. The rendezvous point was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Millbrook. Emma was there waiting along with Dr. Helen Kim, the town doctor who'd agreed to help despite the legal risks. 65 years old and still making house calls, still believing that medicine was about helping people, not covering your liability. They carried the patients inside. Dr. Kim started triage immediately. Dehydration, malnutrition, chemical dependency from prolonged sedation. But alive. All 4 of them alive. Emma wheeled herself to where Marcus was setting Margaret down on a cot. The 2 women looked at each other. Aunt and niece. Both victims of the same man. Both survivors of the same hell. "Maggie?" Emma's voice cracked. Margaret's eyes focused slowly. Really focused for the first time in 6 years. "Sarah?" Her voice was thick with sedation, confused. "Is that you?" "It's not Sarah, Aunt Maggie." Emma leaned closer, tears streaming. "It's Emma, Sarah's daughter, your niece." Margaret blinked, struggling through the fog. "Emma? Little Emma? They told me you were dead. I'm alive. We're both alive now." The recognition came in stages. Confusion. Disbelief. Then joy so pure it hurt to watch. "Emma, oh my God, Emma." They held each other and cried. Marcus stepped back to give them privacy. Gave them this moment because moments like this were what made everything worth it. Made the risk and the danger and the potential consequences fade into background noise. His radio crackled. Team Charlie clear. Sheriff Hendricks ran interference. All patients secured. Marcus closed his eyes and breathed. 15 people. They'd saved 15 people. But the night wasn't over yet. Nathan arrived 20 minutes later with news that made Marcus's blood run cold. Sullivan knows. He's mobilizing everything. Private security, corrupt cops, political allies. He's calling this a terrorist kidnapping. Painting you as violent extremists who abducted vulnerable patients. The media? Already running with his story. I'm seeing it on 3 networks. Sullivan's doing damage control. Press conference scheduled for midnight. Then we beat him to it. Marcus looked at Emma. We go live first. Tell the truth before he can bury it. How? Nathan held up his laptop. I can set up a live stream, multiple platforms, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Make it impossible to shut down all at once. And say what? Emma looked uncertain. Who's going to believe me over a state senator? Everyone who sees this. Alex pulled out his phone, showed her the video of Sullivan ordering her death. This goes viral, Emma. This changes everything. Emma stared at the phone screen, watched her father condemn her to death in his own words, watched him prove every terrible thing she'd said about him. Then she looked up with steel in her eyes, set it up. While Nathan configured the streaming equipment, Marcus organized the warehouse. 15 patients in various states of consciousness, 8 operators standing guard. Sheriff Hendricks posted outside with 3 deputies he trusted. Dr. Kim moving between patients with quiet efficiency. They were as ready as they'd ever be. Nathan positioned Emma in front of the camera. No makeup, no preparation, just a young woman in a wheelchair with truth on her side and nothing left to lose. The laptop screen showed viewer count climbing. 10 people, 50, 200. The algorithm was picking it up, pushing it out, making it visible. Emma took a deep breath, started talking. My name is Emma Sullivan. My father is Senator William Sullivan of Georgia. And everything you've been told about me is a lie. Her voice was steady, strong. The voice of someone who'd survived hell and come out the other side angry instead of broken. 2 years ago, I was in a car accident that left me paralyzed from the waist down. My father saw me as a liability to his political career. So he had me committed to a private facility where I was drugged, restrained, and held against my will for 22 months. The viewer count was climbing faster now. 500, 1,000. People were sharing the stream, commenting, watching this young woman destroy her father's career in real time. Tonight, this man, Emma gestured to Marcus standing beside her, this complete stranger who stopped his motorcycle in the rain 3 days ago. He and his friends rescued me and 14 other victims from facilities my father has been using to disappear people. People whose families paid him to make them go away. Behind her, the patients were visible. Margaret sitting up now, tears streaming down her face. The others in various states of awareness. Physical proof that everything Emma said was true. My father is a monster. He had my mother killed. He imprisoned my aunt for 6 years. He tried to have me murdered. And right now his men are outside this building trying to stop me from telling you the truth. As if on cue, gunfire erupted outside. The sharp crack of pistols followed by the deeper boom of shotguns. Sheriff Hendricks's voice shouted commands. Get down, everyone down. The operators moved immediately, forming a perimeter, weapons ready, protecting the patients, protecting Emma, who was still talking to the camera, even as the bullets punched through the warehouse walls. You're watching this happen in real time. My father sent armed men to silence me, to silence all of us. This is what corruption looks like when you threaten it. This is what power does when you try to hold it accountable. More gunfire. Closer now. Marcus moved to shield Emma, but she waved him off, kept talking, kept the camera rolling. The viewer count was exploding. 10,000, 50,000. This was going viral. Sullivan's men hit the front door with a battering ram. It splintered but held. Sheriff Hendricks fired a warning shot over their heads. Next one, center mass. Back off. The ram hit again. The door gave way. 4 men in tactical gear poured through. They had the weapons and the numbers, but Marcus's operators had the motivation, had righteousness on their side, had the certainty that what they were doing mattered. The fight was brutal and brief, fists and gun butts and broken bones. One of Sullivan's men went down with a shattered knee. Another took a taser to the neck and dropped like a stone. A third tried to flank and caught Sheriff Hendricks's baton across the jaw. But they kept coming, more men, more weapons, more money and power, and the confidence that came from never having lost before. Emma never stopped talking. My father will tell you I'm mentally unstable. He'll say I've been manipulated by extremists. He'll use every weapon in his arsenal to discredit me. She leaned toward the camera. Ask yourself this. Would a loving father send armed men to attack his own daughter on live television? The viewer count hit 200,000, then 500,000. The stream was trending #1 nationwide. News networks were picking up the feed. The truth was spreading faster than Sullivan could contain it. Then through the chaos came a sound that made everyone freeze. Helicopter rotors, multiple aircraft converging on their position. Marcus looked up through the shattered roof and saw searchlights cutting through the darkness. A loudspeaker boomed across the warehouse. "This is the FBI. All armed individuals will lower their weapons immediately. This facility is surrounded." Sullivan's men looked at each other, looked at the FBI choppers, looked at the cameras still rolling. Slowly, they lowered their weapons, started backing toward the exits. This wasn't the job they'd signed up for. Wasn't worth federal prison. The front door opened and a woman walked in. Asian American, late 30s, FBI credentials held high. She surveyed the scene with sharp eyes that missed nothing. The patients, the operators, the weapons. Emma still in front of the camera. "Agent Sarah Chen," she said, "FBI Organized Crime Division. Someone want to tell me what the hell is going on here?" Marcus stepped forward. "We just rescued 15 people from illegal imprisonment. We have video evidence of Senator Sullivan ordering his daughter's death. And we have financial records proving a multi-state conspiracy to hide vulnerable people for profit." Chen looked at Emma. "You're Emma Sullivan, the daughter who supposedly doesn't exist." "I exist." Emma's voice was tired but firm. "And I'm not the only one." Chen pulled out her phone. "Made a call. This is Chen. I need arrest teams at the following locations immediately. Senator William Sullivan's residence, his campaign headquarters, and I need warrants for 17 Kyo conspirators." She listened for a moment. "I don't care what time it is. I don't care who he knows. Get me those warrants in the next hour or I'm going to the media with what we found here." She ended the call, looked at Marcus. "You've created a hell of a mess. I've exposed a hell of a crime." Chen almost smiled. "Yeah, you did." She raised her voice. "Everyone in this building who's not a victim needs to stay put. You're all witnesses now. We'll need statements from everyone." Marcus looked at Emma, who was still streaming, still talking to her growing audience about corruption and justice and the price of speaking truth to power. The viewer count had passed 2 million. This was the kind of viral moment that changed things, that made invisible people visible, that turned private crimes into public scandals. Senator Sullivan's world was ending, and he didn't even know it yet. The arrest came at 4:30 in the morning. Marcus wasn't there to see it, but Nathan had contacts who gave him the details. FBI agents knocking on Sullivan's door in the exclusive Buckhead neighborhood. The senator answering in silk pajamas, looking annoyed. The lead agent reading him his rights while cameras from 3 news networks filmed from the street. Conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, racketeering, wire fraud, money laundering. The charges kept coming. Sullivan's face went from annoyed to shocked to terrified in the span of 30 seconds. His lawyer arrived within minutes, but it was too late. The damage was done. The perfect image was shattered beyond repair. By dawn, Sullivan was in federal custody. Dr. Morrison was arrested at his home. Victor Cross was picked up at a hotel trying to check out under a fake name. 14 others went down in coordinated raids. The whole network collapsed like a house of cards. Emma's live stream had been viewed over 10 million times. News networks were playing clips on loop. Social media exploded with outrage and support and demands for justice. The story had everything people loved: a powerful villain, an innocent victim, a dramatic rescue, and proof on video that the whole terrible thing was real. Marcus sat in the warehouse drinking coffee that tasted like motor oil and watching the sun come up. He was exhausted, bruised, pretty sure he'd cracked a rib during the fight. But alive. They were all alive. 15 patients, 8 operators, 1 stubborn woman in a wheelchair who'd refused to stay silent. Emma wheeled over and sat beside him. "We did it. You did it. I just drove the motorcycle." She smiled. A real smile this time. Not the small, tired thing from before, but something genuine. "Thank you, Marcus, for everything. Thank you for trusting me." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the morning light paint the warehouse walls. Outside, they could hear Sheriff Hendricks giving statements to the press. Inside, Dr. Kim was still treating patients, making sure everyone was stable enough for transport to proper medical facilities. Agent Chen approached with her phone out. "I need to show you something." She pulled up a map. Red dots are marked locations across 12 states. These are other facilities we've identified as part of Sullivan's network. Based on the financial records your friend Nathan provided, we estimate over 100 potential victims. 100 people, at least. Chen's expression was grim. "This is bigger than we thought. Much bigger. We're going to need help identifying all of them, getting them out, making sure they're safe." Emma didn't hesitate. "I'll help, however long it takes, whatever you need." "You sure?" Chen studied her. "This means testifying, facing your father in court, having your whole life examined by lawyers who'll try to destroy your credibility." "I'm sure." Emma's voice was steel-wrapped in velvet. "Those people are locked up because families like mine decided they were inconvenient. I'm not going to rest until every single one of them is free." Chen nodded. "Then welcome to the team." The trial didn't start for 6 months. That's how long it took to build a case against someone as powerful as Senator William Sullivan. How long it took to gather every piece of evidence, interview every witness, trace every dollar through the labyrinth of shell companies and offshore accounts. Marcus used that time to help Emma build something new. They converted an old warehouse on the outskirts of Millbrook into a recovery center. Named it Rolling Thunder House because Emma said it reminded her of the sound of Marcus's motorcycle in the rain. The sound of salvation arriving when she'd given up hope. The facility had 30 beds, wheelchair accessible throughout, physical therapy equipment, counseling services, a kitchen where survivors could learn to cook again, a library where they could remember what it felt like to choose their own reading material, a common room where they could gather and talk and slowly, painfully, beautifully heal. Margaret was the first resident. She moved in the day the facility opened and refused to leave. Said she'd spent 6 years locked up and she wasn't going anywhere unless Emma threw her out personally. Within a month, she was helping run the place, organizing activities, counseling new arrivals, turning her trauma into purpose. The other survivors from that first night all came through at some point. Sarah, the former chef, started teaching cooking classes. Tommy, the young man with cerebral palsy, enrolled in community college and studied social work. David, the lawyer who'd been hidden after a scandal, started working pro bono for other survivors, each one finding their own path back to life. The trial was everything Emma had feared and more. Sullivan's lawyers were vicious. They attacked her credibility, called her mentally unstable, suggested she'd fabricated everything for attention or money or revenge. They brought in experts who testified that her memory couldn't be trusted after 2 years of sedation. They painted her as a disturbed young woman who'd been manipulated by anti-government extremists. But they couldn't explain the video, couldn't explain Sullivan's own voice ordering his daughter's death, couldn't explain the financial records showing millions of dollars moving through fake companies, couldn't explain the testimony of 15 other survivors who all told the same story. The prosecution called Marcus to testify. He wore a suit for the first time in 20 years. Sat in the witness box and told the truth about finding Emma in the rain, about believing her when everyone else had given up, about the raid and the rescue and the night that changed everything. Sullivan's lawyer tried to paint him as a vigilante, a violent man with a grudge against authority. Marcus didn't take the bait, just answered the questions honestly, admitted he'd broken into the facilities, admitted he'd used force when necessary, admitted he'd do it all again without hesitation because saving lives mattered more than following rules written to protect the powerful. When Emma took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. She wheeled herself to the witness box with her head high, faced her father for the first time since that terrible hospital visit 2 years ago. And she told her story, all of it, every terrible detail, every moment of fear and pain and desperation. Sullivan stared at his hands the whole time, never looked up, never met her eyes. The man who'd once been so confident, so powerful, so certain of his place in the world, had shrunk into something small and ashamed. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, the foreman stood and read the verdict. Guilty on all counts: conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, racketeering. Every charge stuck. Every crime proven beyond reasonable doubt. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. The courtroom was packed when Emma delivered her victim impact statement. She'd written it herself, practiced it with Margaret and Marcus, made sure every word counted. You were supposed to protect me, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the silent room. You were supposed to love me. Instead, you threw me away like garbage because I didn't fit your perfect political image anymore. I used to wonder what I did wrong, what I could have done differently to make you love me. But now I know the truth. The problem was never me. It was you. You're incapable of loving anyone but yourself. She paused, gathering herself for what came next. You killed my mother. You imprisoned my aunt. You tried to have me murdered. And for what? Power? Money? A shot at the governor's mansion? You lost everything that actually mattered, and you didn't even notice. She looked directly at Sullivan for the first time. I forgive you, not for your sake, for mine. I refuse to spend the rest of my life carrying your poison in my heart. You don't deserve that much power over me anymore. Sullivan's composure finally shattered, his face contorted with rage, and he lunged against the guards holding him. Everything I did was for this family. For our legacy. Your legacy is a prison cell. Emma's voice was calm, peaceful. Goodbye, Father. She turned and wheeled away without looking back. The judge sentenced William Sullivan to life without possibility of parole. Additional sentences for the CO conspirators ranged from 15 to 40 years. The whole corrupt network dismantled. The whole terrible machinery of greed and cruelty ground to a halt. 1 year after the rescue, Rolling Thunder House held a celebration. All 15 original survivors attended, along with 30 more who'd been found in other facilities. Agent Chen came, Sheriff Hendricks, Nathan and Alex and the 8 operators who'd risked everything that night. Dr. Kim, Betty from the diner who'd donated food every week since the center opened. Half of Millbrook turned out because that's what small towns did when something good happened. Emma gave a speech, talked about darkness and light and the power of one person deciding to help when everyone else walked away. Talked about Marcus and his motorcycle and a rainy night that changed her life. Talked about hope and healing and the family you build when your blood family fails you. Marcus stood in the back and listened, felt something in his chest that he hadn't felt in 20 years. Pride, maybe, or purpose, or just the simple satisfaction of knowing he had done something that mattered, that Ryan would have been proud of, that Sarah would have approved of. After the speeches and the food and the photographs, Emma found him on the roof garden they'd built. The place where survivors could go to feel the sun and the wind and remember what freedom tasted like. What happens next for you, she asked. Marcus looked out over Millbrook, the town where he'd been born and buried everyone he loved and somehow found a reason to keep living. I think I'll stay, keep running the shop, maybe teach motorcycle repair at the community college. Simple life. After everything? Because of everything. I'm 52 years old. I've fought my wars. This place, these people, that's my final mission. Making sure nobody gets forgotten again. I'm staying too, running the foundation full time. We've got funding now, private donations, government grants. We can open 5 more centers across the state. Your legs? Therapy helps. I can stand a few minutes now, maybe walk someday. But even if I don't, I'm not broken. You taught me that. They sat in comfortable silence watching the sun set over Georgia. Watched the sky turn from blue to orange to purple to black. Watched the stars come out one by one like promises being kept. Around 9 p.m. it started to rain. Gentle at first, then harder. The kind of rain that washed things clean. Marcus stood to go inside, but Emma stopped him. Wait, listen. He listened. Heard the rain on the roof. Heard thunder rumbling in the distance. Heard the sound of water falling on a world that needed washing. And underneath it all, he heard something else. The faint rumble of a motorcycle engine. Someone riding through the rain. Marcus walked to the edge of the roof garden and looked down. In the parking lot, he saw a young man in a wheelchair, maybe 23, soaking wet, looking up at the building like it was the last chance he had. Emma wheeled beside Marcus. Should we help him? Marcus smiled, already heading for the stairs. Yeah, we should. They met the young man at the front door. Emma had a blanket. Marcus had towels. The kid looked terrified and hopeful and desperate all at once. The look Marcus had seen in a mirror every day for 20 years until he'd found a reason to stop looking. What's your name? Emma asked gently. Jordan, the young man's voice shook. I I escaped from a place. They were keeping me locked up, drugged. I didn't know where else to go, but I saw the news about this place and you're safe now, Marcus said. Come inside. Let's get you warm. They brought Jordan into Rolling Thunder House, into the light, in the warmth, in the community of people who understood exactly what he'd been through. Margaret appeared with soup. Tommy brought dry clothes. Sarah started running a bath. The machinery of healing activated automatically because that's what they did here. That's who they were. Emma and Marcus stood in the doorway watching. Another victim saved, another life reclaimed, another person learning that they mattered. This is it, isn't it? Emma said. This is what we do now, forever. Forever's a long time. Then how about one day at a time? One day at a time. Marcus agreed. We can do that. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside Rolling Thunder House, the lights burned bright against the darkness. And somewhere in Georgia, another person who'd been left for dead was finding their way home. The sign above the door said it all. Everyone deserves shelter from the storm. Felt something in his chest that he hadn't felt in 18 years. Had lost everything that mattered learning it. Had nearly destroyed himself learning it. But now finally he understood. Shelter wasn't just a roof and walls. It was people who refused to walk away when things got hard. It was strangers who became family. It was the choice to help, even when it cost you everything. Some people are left in the rain to die. Others are found by strangers who become family. And sometimes the ones the world throws away become the very ones who save it. Marcus had been thrown away once. After Ryan died, after Sarah died, after the world convinced him he had nothing left to offer. But Emma had shown him different, had reminded him that broken people could still build something beautiful, that the second half of life could matter just as much as the first. He locked up Rolling Thunder House that night knowing he'd be back tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Because this was his purpose now, his mission, his reason for getting up every morning and facing another day. The rain had stopped by the time he climbed on his Harley. The air smelled clean, the stars were bright, and as Marcus rode through the quiet streets of Millbrook, he felt something he hadn't felt in 2 decades. Peace, not the peace of having no problems. The peace of having problems that mattered. The peace of fighting battles worth fighting. The peace of knowing that when his time came and he stood before whatever came next, he could say with certainty that the last years of his life had counted for something. He pulled into the garage of his shop, killed the engine, sat in the darkness listening to the metal tick as it cooled. Somewhere in the building a pipe clanked, the radiator hissed, the old place settling into the quiet rhythms of night. Marcus climbed the stairs to his small apartment, looked at the photos on the wall, Sarah smiling on their wedding day, Ryan grinning with that base he'd caught, his father young and proud in his Marine uniform. 3 generations of Garrett men all gone now, all except him. But he wasn't alone anymore. Had Emma and Margaret and Tommy and all the others. Had Alex and Nathan and Sheriff Tom. Had a whole town that had rallied around him when it mattered. Had a purpose that got him out of bed every morning. That was enough. More than enough. Marcus Brennan went to sleep that night knowing he'd done something good. Something right. Something that would outlive him and maybe, just maybe, make the world a little bit better than he'd found it. And in a small town in Georgia where people still looked out for each other, where veterans still had each other's backs, where one man with a motorcycle and a conscience could still make a difference, that was all that mattered. The storm was over. The sun would rise tomorrow. And at Rolling Thunder House, surrounded by the family he'd built from the wreckage of his past, Marcus Garrett finally understood what it meant to be home.